I think the time travel thing is like, this incredibly important component of this. And then there's like the idea that, gravity and time are super related, in general relativity as well. And so like maybe, gravity itself is sort of very anomalous. Like I'd say like,
and I think I've heard you say this before, but it's also fascinating that so many of these things are happening where it's the highest level military people who are citing it, who quite literally are so tested that if they take ibuprofen, they got to report that. So when you talk about sober people seeing this shit, like you're not getting more sober than the dudes on these bases. And yet they report a lot of the same things. The alleged UFOs start fucking with the nuclear codes and shit like that. And in the middle of all this, since World War II, when James Fox went on Joe Rogan in April 2023, he did this unbelievable, like 25-minute just riff of all the history of UFOs since World War II that was just like, holy shit. Like he's so into it and understands it. So many of these sightings, you kind of pointed this out a few minutes ago, they're in all different parts of the world. We're talking pre-internet, before people could get in chat rooms and plan out hoaxes together and shit. In different countries, kids, adults, everything in between. And it's not all the same, but there are a lot of the same themes. The telepathy, you described how these little gray men look, and evolutionary, what that could be. And when I put into account, say, with one example, the Zimbabwe case where allegedly telepathically the aliens said to the kids, I forget what exactly it was, but it was like, be careful, technology could lead you down the wrong path. You could
destroy yourselves and you're destroying the environment. It was very environmentalist.
They're telling, and somewhere at home the conspiracy theories are being like, goddamn Al Gore planting that one. Hey guys, if you have a second, please be sure to share this episode around on social media and with your friends, whether it's Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, doesn't matter. It's all a huge help. It gets new eyeballs on the show, and it allows us to grow and survive. So thank you to all of you who have already been doing that, and thank you to all of you who are going to do so now. But like, you see the point. They're like concerned, and they're concerned at the same time where we have the power of the nuke and the atom bomb in our hands. And it's not like, obviously, we've been talking about history today. This stuff goes all the way back. It's not like it started at World War II. But it very clearly got some themes, both in civilians who witnessed things that had a similarity that could point to future humans, and to, I don't know, potentially future humans being here to say, no, don't do that. You're going to fuck up all these other dimensions if you do that. Like, do you think that part of it, say the nuclear part and the sightings since World War II, are more of an argument towards the future human side of it?
I do, yeah. Because, like, J.Allen Hynek, who's an astronomer who ran the Air Force's front-facing program called Blue Book, which was like meant to explain away all the the UFO stuff, kind of rationalize, dismiss all this stuff out of hand. And then he kind of became reformed afterwards and was like, actually, I played a big part in the cover-up, and my orders were to kind of diminish this. His son Paul Hynek actually had this like very interesting line, which is like, why would they care? And I think in some ways they'd care, like you have like the Rogan always says, like we're like chimps with nukes. And so it's like, that we are kind of interesting in some ways, but maybe not to the extent of like trying to change timelines and like ensure the sustenance of future timelines. And I'm not saying that's definitely what's happening, but if you were to do that, you would definitely really care about our nuclear assets. Like that would be the thing. That would be the Archimedes lever, the point of most leverage, if you will, where you can affect that, you kind of affect everything. If you can stop the Cuban Missile Crisis, if there's some alternative timeline where like that happens, that's where you would like jump in.
Yes.
And so this stuff does just consistently show up around nuclear. So yeah, I think that's like one really good explanation for it. But also if like, I don't know, the world is like a gas station for like factions of aliens and like they're mining us for resources. Like that's another possible, explanation for it, where they just don't want us to blow ourselves up because, again, they're like extracting us for like other stuff. It's hard to say. I don't know. But I do think the time travel hypothesis doesn't get as much airtime as it deserves. Like the extraterrestrial thing just seems like it was kind of foisted on us at some point. And yeah, I'm not at all sure. I think you have to kind of question all your assumptions when it comes to this stuff. You can't take anything kind of at face value, and the ET thing was really kind of like H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds into like 50s movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and that sort of thing, up until, you know, Alien versus Predator and like today and Independence Day and stuff. But like that's kind of like the meme sphere we've been given. But if you like actually look at it scientifically and just use first principles logic, I think the time travel thing is like, you know, this incredibly important component of this. And then there's like the idea that, you know, gravity and time are super related, you know, in general relativity as well. And so like maybe, you know, gravity itself is sort of very anomalous. Like I'd say like gravity and time are like, I'm not, you know, again, at all a physics, you know, I'm not.
You sure as shit are talking like one.
Well, I'm definitely not. But I just think like if you just like zoom out and like, I do think in some ways experts can like not see the forest for the trees sometimes. And so like that's where I maybe can play a small role, where it's like with, you know, gravity and time, like gravity, take gravity, for example, like you can't reconcile it with the other, you know, forces. Like gravity breaks down at subatomic levels, right? Like it's like, why don't like electrons exhibit gravity? It doesn't make sense. And so like, you know, in the quantum world, like gravity does not make sense. And then you could say like in GR, you know, in general relativity, like gravity makes sense. But even like macroscopically, like or cosmologically rather, like you need dark matter to like justify gravity's weakness. And like dark matter is like maybe indirectly detectable at best, but like not really detectable. Like it's kind of seems like this like mathematical placeholder. And then gravity is like orders of magnitude weaker than the other three forces. So like I think it's a mathematical, it's like curve fitting math to like make everything work. It's like to explain like planetary orbits. Like it's like that you have gravity, and then like it doesn't make sense on a subatomic level. Actually, the quantum stuff is like way more useful than like GR when it comes to like building actual tech. So maybe there's something more ontologically true actually about the quantum stuff. And gravity doesn't really make sense in either context in some ways. And then I would say like time is also weird. Like you have time dilation and relativity, you know.
Could you explain time dilation to people who don't understand?
Sure. Time, you know, is dependent on the observer. So if you're moving like way faster, if you're moving, you know, faster, as close as you can to the speed of light or whatever, you're actually like aging slower. So this is like the twin paradox, which is, you know, that's kind of weird, right? And then like, I'm pretty sure like in quantum stuff, time is mostly taken for granted, or like at best it's like you can measure it in terms of like oscillations of like an electromagnetic wave. But like you look at like Schrodinger's equation, it's just like over time, the potential energy plus the kinetic energy equals the total energy of a system or whatever. But it's time is this weird thing. And like, I think Wheeler and DeWitt in the early 50s came up with this idea that maybe time is actually emergent and it's not fundamental. And
which means
it's not this like it's not this fundamentally, it's based on measurement, you know, from the observer. It's not this fundamentally moving thing that's like outside of, you know, the observer's measurement. And so I think, and the math, by the way, is going to be totally above my, but like, I think we take time for granted. Like time is the most used noun in the English language. And if you were to try to define it without respect to like the movement of bodies or whatever, like the movement of macroscopic objects, or without using the word time, you'd have a really hard time, no pun intended. It would be really hard for you to do. And so, and it actually like mechanical clocks, like in like medieval periods and prior, it was like this very embodied thing. And so like, I actually think epistemologically, like we say it, like time flies when you're having fun, or like it slows, like also probably when you're having like a great time, like it feels like you're in this like time vortex, right? And so I think time is just this very, very weird thing that we don't understand. And like, just like you have Newton's theory that was kind of couched within Einstein's theory, which came later, you can place Newton inside of Einstein. Who's to say that like Schrodinger's equation isn't an effective equation that's placed inside of some larger equation in which time is, you know, the Archimedes lever that causes superpositionality and position and momentum, if that makes sense. So like,
James is looking at me like, you out too?
I mean, it all sounds like kind of crazy, but it's like you have this, you know, this wave equation, you have like coordinates of like position and momentum. Like, why wouldn't you? Maybe you could have coordinates of actual time, and time is like. Does it make sense that like an electron would be like superpositional as far as like its position and momentum? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense, like in terms of like the ontological truth. And that's why you had all these debates between the Copenhagen school and Einstein, around like, does this matter for ontological truth? Or what, how do you interpret the quantum stuff? Like this, Einstein's like, this can't be, like, we need an explanation for this. And so all I'm saying is, like, I think time could be this really interesting place to look. Gravity could be this really interesting place to look as far as like where we're off. And it's why, like you have Eric Weinstein, like criticizing like string theory to no end.
Yeah.
And it's because of this like study of quantum gravity, this trying to like locate gravity in the quantum and getting lost in this like crazy abstract math in the form of string theory. And so, yeah, I think if you were trying to make like actual inroads in physics, you'd look at those two things. You look at time and look at gravity.
I think it's an amazing explanation. I understood about half of it, but I think
I understood about half of it too.
You're like, what? You're like Will Ferrell in Old School. Like, I don't know what happened up there. I blacked out.
Literally, yeah.
But when you hear how string theory theoretically is explained, it makes a ton of sense. Obviously, the criticism is that it hasn't shipped a product yet, and it's been around for 50 odd years or so. And I think Eric is perhaps raising an important question just for like science as a community of like, hey, why is there a little bit of a moat around the castle here where we can't talk about whether or not there's actually something. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.